I woke up to silence. No music, no laughter, no smell of cake. I grabbed my phone and squinted at the screen. 7:12 a.m. No notifications. I refreshed my messages anyway. Nothing. I whispered to myself, "Happy birthday to me." My voice sounded strange in the quiet room. I waited a few seconds, like the universe might clap late. It didn't. I dragged myself out of bed and opened my door. The hallway smelled like pancakes. My heart jumped before I could stop it. Maybe they're surprising me, I muttered. I walked into the kitchen and froze. Mom stood at the counter flipping pancakes. Dad sat at the table reading his phone. Emma was laughing at something Ryan showed her. Balloons filled the corner, pink and gold. A giant banner stretched across the wall. "Happy 16th, Emma." My chest tightened. Emma clapped. "Mom, make mine chocolate chip." Mom smiled. "Anything for the birthday girl." I leaned against the doorway. "Morning." Dad looked up briefly. "Morning." Mom didn't turn around. "There's cereal if you're hungry." Emma twirled in front of the balloons. "Do you like the decorations? They're cute, right?" I swallowed. "Yeah, they're nice." Ryan grinned. "Her party tonight is going to be insane." I nodded slowly. "Sounds fun." Emma smiled brightly. "You're coming, right?" I hesitated. "Sure." Mom placed a pancake stack in front of Emma. "My sweet girl is 16. Dad raised his coffee mug. "Happy birthday, princess." Everyone clinked glasses. I stood there, invisible. I cleared my throat. "It's my birthday, too." Silence dropped like a plate shattering. Emma blinked. "Wait today." Ryan snapped his fingers. "Oh yeah." Dad frowned slightly. "Right." Mom sighed. "Honey, we'll celebrate later. Today is Emma's big day." I forced a smile. "Of course." Emma winced. "Sorry." "Happy birthday." Ryan smirked. "Double birthday. Budget nightmare." Dad chuckled. "Good thing we plan ahead." I stared at the balloons again. Planned ahead. I poured cereal and sat down quietly. Emma kept talking about her party. "We have a DJ, right?" Mom nodded. "And a photo booth." Ryan added, "And Dad rented that huge cake from the fancy bakery." Emma squealed. "I love you." Dad laughed. "Anything for you." I chewed dry cereal that tasted like cardboard. I whispered, "I don't need anything big." No one heard me. Grandma's voice suddenly echoed from the hallway. "Who forgot my grandson's birthday?" I turned and felt warmth rush through me. Grandma shuffled in holding a tiny cupcake with a crooked candle. "I didn't forget," she said proudly. Mom sighed. "Mom, we talked about this." Grandma ignored her and walked straight to me. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." My throat tightened. "You didn't have to." She smiled. "Of course I did." Emma whispered, "That's cute." Ryan muttered, "Mini cupcake for the mini celebration." Grandma shot him a sharp look. "Kindness costs nothing." Dad cleared his throat. "Mom, we'll celebrate him later." Grandma asked softly, "When?" No one answered. She handed me the cupcake. "Make a wish." I stared at the tiny candle flickering like it was fighting to exist. I whispered, "I wish I mattered." I blew it out before anyone could react. Grandma squeezed my hand. "You do." Mom clapped suddenly. "Okay." Emma has dress shopping at noon. The moment ended like a TV turned off. I slipped the cupcake into my pocket and left the kitchen. In my room, I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Maybe I'm being dramatic, I told myself. My phone buzzed. "Daniel, happy birthday, man. Lunch today." I smiled weakly and typed back. "Thanks. You remembered." He replied instantly. "Of course I did." "You okay?" I hesitated. "Always." I put the phone down and lay back on the bed. Memories started creeping in. "Surprise, baby." Mom used to laugh. "Happy accident," Dad would joke. Ryan once asked, "Were you a mistake?" Mom answered, "Not a mistake. Just unexpected." Everyone laughed. I learned to laugh too. Tonight, music blasted through the house as Emma's party started. I stayed upstairs pretending to study. My stomach growled. No one had called me down. I walked quietly toward the stairs. Voices floated from the kitchen. Mom whispered, "We spent so much on this party." Dad sighed. "Emma deserves it." Mom lowered her voice. "Sometimes I wish we stopped at 2 kids." Dad chuckled softly. "Life had other plans." Mom replied, "We never planned to have him." My heart stopped. Dad exhaled. "Yeah, he was an accident." Silence roared in my ears. Mom added quietly, "Raising him was hard when we didn't even want another baby." I stepped back before the floor could betray me. My chest felt hollow. I whispered to myself, "Happy birthday." For the first time, the silence answered back. I didn't sleep that night. The words kept replaying in my head like a broken song. We never planned to have him. I stared at the ceiling until the sun started leaking through my curtains. My chest felt tight, like something heavy had parked on it and refused to move. I whispered, "I need to hear them say it to my face." The idea scared me, but staying silent scared me more. I walked into the kitchen slowly. Mom poured coffee. Dad scrolled on his phone. My voice came out shaky. "We need to talk." Mom didn't look up. "Can it wait?" "I'm late." "No," I said. "It can't." Dad sighed. "What's wrong now?" I swallowed. "I heard you last night." Mom froze. Dad lowered his phone. I forced the words out. "You said you never planned to have me." Silence spread across the room. Dad rubbed his forehead. "You were listening to private conversation?" I was walking past the kitchen. Mom crossed her arms. "You shouldn't eavesdrop." My chest tightened. "That's what you got from this." Dad exhaled slowly. "Look, you're taking it the wrong way." "Then explain the right way." I whispered. Mom spoke first. "We didn't mean it like that." "Like what?" I asked. "Like I was a mistake?" Dad's voice grew firm. "You're being too sensitive." I laughed weakly. "Too sensitive?" Mom nodded. "We love you. Why are you creating drama?" "Because it hurts," I said quietly. Dad shook his head. "Life is hard. You need thicker skin." I stared at him. "I just wanted you to say you're glad I exist." Mom sighed loudly. "Of course we're glad. Do we need to say it every day?" "Yes," I whispered. Dad pushed his chair back. "We don't have time for this." Mom grabbed her keys. "We'll talk later." They walked out like the conversation never happened. I stood there alone. I whispered, "Okay, I get it." Dinner that night felt louder than usual. Plates clinked. Emma scrolled her phone. Ryan smirked at something on his screen. Dad said, "Pass the salt." I passed it silently. Ryan suddenly grinned. "You know what I realized today?" Emma asked what. Ryan laughed. "He's the free trial child." Emma giggled. "Stop." Ryan kept going. "Like the bonus kid you didn't order." Dad chuckled under his breath. Mom shook her head but smiled. "Ryan." I stared at my plate. Ryan nudged me. "Relax. It's a joke." I whispered, "Yeah. Funny." Emma laughed again. "You're so serious." Dad added, "You need to learn to laugh at yourself." I pushed my chair back. "I'm not hungry." Mom frowned. "Sit down." "I'm done." I walked upstairs before my voice could crack. In my room, I grabbed my phone and called Daniel. He answered instantly. "Birthday boy. How's life?" I forced a laugh. "Terrible." He paused. "What happened?" I sat on the floor. "My brother called me the free trial child at dinner." Daniel muttered, "Wow." I whispered. No one defended me. He said softly, "I'm sorry." I asked, "Do you think I'm too sensitive?" He answered fast, "No, I think they're cruel." My chest tightened. "I don't know what to do anymore." He said firmly, "Focus on your future." "I live with them." "Not forever," he replied. I stayed quiet. He added, "You deserve better." My voice cracked. "What if they never love me?" Daniel answered gently, then stopped begging for it. His words hit hard. The next morning at school, I dragged myself into class. Mr. Collins stopped me after the bell. "Stay a minute." I nodded nervously. He looked at my test paper. "This isn't your best work." I whispered, "Sorry." He studied my face. "Are you okay?" I forced a smile. "Just tired." He shook his head. "You used to participate. Now you barely speak." I stared at the floor. He said softly, "You can talk to me." My voice came out small. "What if home doesn't feel like home?" He paused. "Then you build your own." I blinked. "Ow." "Step by step," he said. "Start with your goals." I whispered, "College." He smiled. "Good. Focus on that." I nodded slowly. As I left the classroom, Daniel caught up with me. "Lunch." I managed a weak smile. "Yeah." We sat outside on the steps. Daniel said, "You look like you didn't sleep." "I didn't." He sighed. "You can't keep living for their approval." I stared at the ground. "I keep hoping they'll change." He asked quietly, "What if they don't?" I whispered, "Then I'm on my own." He nudged my shoulder. "You're not alone." I smiled faintly. "Thanks." For the first time, I stopped waiting for my family to notice me. And that realization scared me more than anything. I stared at the college acceptance email for a long time before walking downstairs. My hands were shaking. We need to talk. Dad didn't look up from the TV. Make it quick. Mom sighed. What is it now? I swallowed. I got accepted. Emma clapped. Oh wow. Congrats. Ryan nodded. Nice. I forced a small smile. I need help with tuition. Dad muted the TV. How much? I told him the number. Mom's eyebrows shot up. That's expensive. I nodded. I can work part-time. I just need help with the rest. Dad leaned back. We're already paying for Emma's college. Emma looked uncomfortable. My program costs a lot. I know, I said quietly. I just need a little help. Mom shook her head. We can't afford both. My chest tightened. You paid for Ryan. Dad shrugged. Different situation. I stared at him. Ow. Mom crossed her arms. You can take loans. I whispered. You didn't make him take loans. Dad's voice hardened. Stop comparing yourself. I'm not comparing, I said. I'm asking for equal help. Emma spoke softly. I worked hard to get into my school. I nodded. So did I. Ryan muttered. Here we go again. Dad pointed at me. You need to be realistic. My voice cracked. I'm being realistic. I can't do this alone. Mom sighed loudly. You're an adult now. I stared at her. So I'm on my own? Dad nodded. Yes. Silence filled the room. I whispered, okay. Mom frowned. Don't be dramatic. I laughed quietly. I'm not. I walked upstairs, grabbed my backpack, and started packing clothes. My hands moved fast, like if I slowed down, I'd change my mind. Mom knocked on the door. What are you doing? Leaving. She opened the door. Stop this nonsense. I zipped my bag. You said I'm on my own. Dad appeared behind her. You're overreacting. I shook my head. No, I am listening. Emma's voice trembled. You don't have to go. I looked at her. You don't have to stay quiet either. Ryan scoffed. He'll be back in a week. I slung my bag over my shoulder. Maybe, maybe not. Mom's voice softened. Where will you go? I shrugged. I'll figure it out. Dad crossed his arms. Don't expect us to rescue you. I nodded. I won't. I walked out before my courage could fade. Outside, I called Daniel. He answered instantly. What happened? I left. He went silent. You're serious? I'm standing on the sidewalk with a backpack. He said quickly, come to my place. I exhaled. Are you sure? Always. An hour later, I sat on his couch staring at the wall. Daniel handed me water. You okay? No. He nodded. Good. That means you're human. I laughed weakly. What do I do now? We find you a place. Today. By evening, we stood outside an old apartment building. Daniel whispered, cheap rent. I nodded nervously. Looks old. Mrs. Patel opened the door before we knocked. You must be the student. I blinked. Yes. She studied me. You have job? Not yet. She crossed her arms. You need job soon. I will. She nodded slowly. No parties. No late rent. No excuses. I said quickly, yes, ma'am. She handed me a key. Welcome. I stared at the key in my palm. Daniel grinned. You did it. I whispered, I'm terrified. He laughed. That means you're growing. That night, I sat alone in my tiny room. I whispered to the empty space, this is my life now. The next morning, I walked into a small cafe and asked the manager, are you hiring? He looked me over. Can you start today? I nodded. Yes. He handed me an apron. Welcome to survival. I tied the apron and whispered to myself, I really did it. Then I realized freedom felt heavier than I expected. My alarm screamed at 5:30 a.m. I groaned. I just closed the cafe 5 hours ago. My phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. Daniel, still alive? Me, barely. Daniel, proud of you. I whispered, I hope it's worth it. At the cafe, my manager handed me a mop. You're late. I'm 2 minutes early. He shrugged. Be earlier. I nodded quietly. Yes, sir. A girl behind the counter laughed softly. He says that to everyone. I glanced at her. Good to know. She smiled. I'm Sophia. I'm tired. She grinned. Nice to meet you, tired. I laughed for the first time that morning. I'm serious. She handed me coffee. Drink. On the house. I blinked. Really? She nodded. You look like you might fall over. I took a sip. You just saved my life. She leaned against the counter. Why do you look like the world is chasing you? I hesitated. Because it is. She tilted her head. College. Night classes. Job. Too. She whistled. You're brave. I'm desperate. She shook her head. Same thing sometimes. That night, I rushed into class 5 minutes late. Mr. Collins raised an eyebrow. Long day. I nodded. Always. He smiled gently. Sit down. You made it. After class, he stopped me. You're improving. I blinked. Really? He nodded. Your last assignment was strong. I whispered, thank you. He added, keep going. You're building momentum. The word momentum echoed in my chest all night. Days blurred into weeks. At the cafe, Sophia asked, when do you sleep? Never. She frowned. That's not sustainable. I don't have a choice. You always have choices, she said. I shrugged. Not good ones. She crossed her arms. You're too hard on yourself. I laughed softly. You don't know me, she said quietly, then tell me. I stared at the coffee machine. My family didn't want me. She didn't laugh. She didn't pity me. She just said their loss. My chest tightened. That's not how it feels. She nodded. I know. My phone buzzed. Mom, can you send money? Ryan needs help. I stared at the screen. Sophia asked, bad news? Family. She nodded slowly. They miss you. I shook my head. They need money. Her jaw tightened. Did they ask how you are? No. She whispered. You don't owe them anything. I sighed. They're still my family. She replied softly. You're still their son. I didn't answer. Weeks passed. Sophia slid a flyer across the counter. Internship fair. I laughed. I barely survived now. She pointed at me. You deserve more than survival. I don't think I'm good enough. She frowned. Stop saying that. I'm serious. She leaned closer. You work harder than anyone here. That doesn't mean I'm smart. She rolled her eyes. You go to night classes after working all day. I whispered, I'm trying. She smiled. Trying wins eventually. At the fair, I whispered to Daniel, I feel out of place. He nudged me. You belong here. I shook my head. Look at these people. He said firmly, look at you. I walked to a booth with shaking hands. The recruiter smiled. Tell me about yourself. My voice trembled. I work 2 jobs and study at night. She leaned forward. That tells me a lot. Days later, my phone rang during my shift. Hello. Is this about the internship? My heart stopped. Yes. We'd like to offer you a position. I gripped the counter. Really? Really? I whispered, thank you. Sophia grabbed my arm. What happened? I smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. I got it. She screamed. I knew it. I laughed breathlessly. This changes everything. For the first time, the future didn't scare me. It excited me. I stood in my empty living room and whispered, this is mine. My voice echoed off the walls. I laughed quietly. I actually did it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Daniel, house tour tonight? Me, bring pizza. Daniel, proud of you, man. I smiled and walked to the kitchen. I wish Grandma could see this. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello. Mom's voice trembled. Hi, it's me. My chest tightened. Hi. She spoke quickly. We've been trying to reach you. I changed my number years ago. I know, she said softly. We got it from Emma. I swallowed. Is everything okay? There was a long pause. Dad's voice joined. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. About what? Mom whispered. Our business isn't doing well. I leaned against the counter. I'm sorry to hear that. Dad cleared his throat. We might lose the house. Silence filled my kitchen. Mom added, Emma's wedding is soon. I closed my eyes. Congratulations to her. She wants you there, Mom said. I whispered, does she? Dad cut in. We also need help financially. The words hit harder than I expected. I laughed quietly. Of course you do. Mom's voice cracked. Please don't be angry. I'm not angry, I said softly. Just surprised. Dad sighed. We know we haven't talked in years. Years, I repeated. Mom said quickly. We regret that. I stared at the window. Do you? Dad spoke firmly. You've done well for yourself. I laughed again. You checked. Mom whispered, we're proud of you. The words felt strange, like shoes that didn't fit. I asked quietly, what do you need? Dad didn't hesitate. Alone. I nodded slowly, even though they couldn't see me. How much? He told me the number. My grip tightened on the phone. Mom rushed to speak. We'll pay you back. I whispered. Like you paid for Emma's college? Silence. Dad exhaled. We deserve that. Mom said softly. We know we made mistakes. I leaned against the wall. You forgot my birthdays. She started crying. I remember now. I closed my eyes. That's the problem. Dad cleared his throat. Can we meet? My heart pounded. Meet? Mom said quickly, face to face. I hesitated. Why now? She whispered. Because we miss you. The words felt heavy. I didn't answer. Later that night, Daniel walked in holding pizza. You look pale. I sat on a couch. My parents called. He froze. What? They need money. He groaned. Of course they do. I rubbed my temples. Their business is failing. And Emma's wedding? He guessed. I nodded. How did you know? Because they only call when they need something. I sighed. They said they're proud of me. Daniel sat beside me. How did that feel? Confusing. He nodded. Part of you wants to help. Yes. And part of you remembers everything. Yes. He said gently. You don't owe them. I know. He added softly. But you still love them. I whispered. I don't know how to stop. Sophia called that night. I answered. Hey. She asked. Why do you sound like you lost a fight? My parents called. She sighed. What do they want? Money. She paused. And they want to meet. She asked quietly. Do you want to go? I don't know. She said gently. Closure matters. I whispered. I'm scared. She replied. That means it matters. I stared at the ceiling long after the call ended. My phone felt heavy in my hand. I typed slowly. We can meet. Mom replied instantly. Mom, thank you. I stared at the message and whispered. This changes everything. I arrived early and whispered to myself. Breathe. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The hostess smiled. Table for 5? Yes. I sat down and stared at the empty chairs. Mom rushed in first. You look amazing. I forced a smile. Hi, Mom. Dad followed. Son. The words sounded unfamiliar. Emma walked in wearing a bright smile. You came. Ryan stayed near the door. Hey. I nodded. Hey. Mom reached for my hand. We missed you. I gently pulled back. It's been years. Dad cleared his throat. Let's order. We sat in silence until the waiter left. Mom leaned forward. We're proud of you. I stared at the table. You said that on the phone. Emma whispered. We should have said it sooner. I asked quietly, why didn't you? No one answered. Ryan stared at the menu like it held answers. Mom spoke softly. We made mistakes. I nodded. That's true. Dad sighed. We were overwhelmed. I asked with what? He hesitated. Life. I laughed quietly. You had life when you forgot my birthdays. Mom wiped her eyes. Please don't do this. Do what? I asked. Bring up the past. I leaned back. That's why we're here. Emma grabbed my hand. I'm sorry. I studied her face. For what? For everything, she said quickly. I whispered. That sounds rehearsed. She flinched. It's not. I asked softly. Do you remember a single birthday of mine? She stayed silent. Ryan muttered, this is awkward. I looked at him. You call me the free trial child. He avoided my eyes. I was young. So was I replied. Dad raised his hands. We're trying. I nodded. I see that. Mom leaned forward. We need your help. There was. I whispered, how much? Dad told me the number again. I let out a slow breath. That's a lot. Mom rushed to speak. We'll pay you back. I asked quietly. Like you paid attention to me? She started crying. We regret everything. I whispered. Do you regret it or the consequences? Dad frowned. That's not fair. I laughed softly. Fair. Emma whispered. Please don't hate us. I looked at her. I don't hate you. Ryan asked quietly. Then why does this feel like punishment? I answered honestly. Because it hurts. Mom reached for my hand again. We love you. I asked softly, when did that start? She broke down crying. Dad whispered. We didn't realize how much we hurt you. I nodded slowly. I believe you. Hope flickered in Mom's eyes. You do? Yes, I said. Dad smiled slightly. Then you'll help us? I shook my head. No. Silence slammed into the table. Emma whispered, what? I took a deep breath. I can't give you money. Mom sobbed. Why? Because I spent my whole life begging for love. Dad's face hardened. This isn't revenge. I know, I said softly. This is closure. Emma cried. We need you. I nodded. I needed you first. Ryan whispered. We messed up. Yes, I said gently. Mom begged. Please reconsider. I shook my head. I'm grateful, though. Dad blinked. Grateful? You taught me independence through neglect. No one spoke. I stood up slowly. Thank you for that. Mom whispered, don't leave. I smiled sadly. Already did years ago. I walked out before my voice could break. Outside, I whispered to myself, I'm free. For the first time, freedom felt real. I woke up to noise. Not silence. Laughter. For a second, I panicked. What's happening? My bedroom door flew open. Daniel shouted, Happy birthday! I blinked at the bright light. What are you doing in my house? Sophia walked in holding balloons. Breaking in. I sat up slowly. Ow! Mrs. Patel appeared behind them. I have spare key. I laughed. Of course you do. Mr. Collins stepped in with a cake box. Permission granted by the homeowner. I rubbed my face. This is a dream. Daniel shook his head. Nope. Real life. Sophia grinned. Get up. I looked around at their smiling faces. No one forgot. I whispered. You remembered. Daniel frowned. We always do. Mrs. Patel nodded. Birthdays matter. Mr. Collins placed the cake on my desk. Especially yours. My throat tightened. Why? Sophia answered softly. Because you're here. Daniel added. Because you fought to be. I swallowed hard. You guys didn't have to do all this. Mrs. Patel crossed her arms. We wanted to. Mr. Collins smiled. There's a difference. I stood up slowly. I don't even know what to say. Daniel handed me a small box. Say thank you later. Open this. I opened it and saw a framed photo of all of us at my housewarming. I whispered, When did you take this? Sophia laughed. You were busy bragging about your kitchen. I smiled. It's a great kitchen. Daniel grinned. You earned it. Mrs. Patel adjusted a balloon. You worked hard. Mr. Collins nodded. You never quit. I looked at each of them. There were nights I wanted to. Sophia stepped closer. But you didn't. Daniel said, You chose yourself. I whispered, I was scared. Mr. Collins replied, Courage isn't the absence of fear. Mrs. Patel added, It is walking anyway. I laughed softly. You all sound like a motivational poster. Daniel shrugged. We're wise now. Sophia lit the candles. Make a wish. I stared at the flames. Last year, I whispered that I wished I mattered. This year felt different. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up. Mom, happy birthday. We're proud of you. I stared at the message for a long moment. Daniel noticed. Everything okay? I nodded slowly. My mom texted. Sophia asked gently. What did she say? She said they're proud. Mrs. Patel watched me carefully. How does that feel? I searched for anger. I found none. It feels calm. Mr. Collins smiled softly. That's growth. Daniel leaned against the wall. You don't need it anymore. I whispered no. Sophia asked quietly. Do you believe them? I thought about it. Yes, I said. But I don't depend on it. Daniel grinned. That's the difference. I typed back. Me. Thank you. I hope you're well. I put the phone down. Mrs. Patel nodded approvingly. Peace is powerful. I looked at the cake again. Sophia said softly, You deserve to celebrate. I laughed. I'm still getting used to that. Daniel nudged me. Get used to it. Mr. Collins folded his arms. Tell me something. What? He smiled. Who are you now? I thought carefully. I'm not the accident anymore. Sophia tilted her head. Then what are you? I felt something warm settle in my chest. I'm the choice. Daniel clapped. That's it. Mrs. Patel smiled proudly. Good answer. I looked around my room. Balloons. Cake. Laughter. No silence. No emptiness. Just warmth. I took a deep breath. Okay, let's do this. They started singing loudly and badly. I laughed so hard my eyes watered. When they finished, I leaned closer to the candles. I whispered quietly so only I could hear, I survived. I grew. I belong. Then I blew them out.